Hey, everybody. Welcome to Impossible Live. Welcome back if you're joining us again. And you today are in for an extraordinary treat. And thanks for your incredible patience. We had a fun kind of spring break hiatus. We'll talk about that later, but we have a very special treat for you today. The beautiful and the talented and the award winning Tiffany English. And I have to keep saying award winning because we have to remind her that we are always celebrating her, but we have to remind her to truly celebrate herself and her amazing talent. So not only do I want to welcome you and thank you also for just your incredible support, for being a vital part of our event alchemy community. And Tiffany just popped in on a LinkedIn audio and this amazing voice on stage and fantastic vibes. And then she came back with more gems. And then she came back with more gems. And then she started giving takeaways. So if you haven't had a chance, if you're curious about events, about gifting, definitely let's give a warm welcome to beautiful Tiffany of Velvet Style. How are you today?
I'm great, Mel. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Thank you for inviting me on this incredible show. I've been, listening to all the guests that you have. So I'm so excited to grace your stage. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And I love it because today, as y'all will notice, I am in a slightly different location. So I am with amazing family in the Adirondacks. And yes, we still have a home phone. So
Yes.
you will hear it in the background. You will hear it in the background. But Tiffany, tell us a little bit about you and your amazing talents and some of the services that you offer. So the people who haven't had a chance to check out your LinkedIn profile, and those that may be on Meta, tell them a little bit about you, and we'll talk to them also about how to find you on YouTube.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So I'm the founder of Velvet Style Event Marketing. I am an event professional, but more importantly, I say that I'm an event strategist because I use events as a way to market your business and brand. So I've been in the event space for quite some time. I started freelancing under Velvet Style in 2010, helping small business owners do smaller events to attract their community and grow their business. And right now, currently, I do that in addition to working in corporate events, planning meetings, retreats, and conferences, and just really staying intact on the in-person event landscape because it's changed in the last few years since COVID as well. So
It is definitely changed, and I think, like you would say, one of the biggest changes, and I love, as you suggested, today's title was about the power of community. How we connect is changing. How
mhm.
we follow up is changing. How we build relationships is changing dramatically. And I just love that you popped into a LinkedIn audio event. And it was funny because we've been hosting Impossible Live for over 3 years. But LinkedIn audio rooms, I would just pop into them. And I think in the beginning, one of the things that was really challenging for me, and it's funny because I've been on LinkedIn 17 years, plus, but in the process, I think what's changing is how we're building relationships and trying to select which relationships we want to step in a little closer. And I love it because Ali Urin had an amazing post recently about how COVID and the pandemic really changed what she did and how she approached. And we're a lot more selective now than we ever were.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's literally what I was going to say. I said, we know those, the days are gone where we just go to anything and everything. And we are very selective of where we decide to spend our time. with, because it's precious, right? And then as event organizers or leaders that are hosting things, need to understand that you're competing with other people's time. So you need to make it impactful. You need to make it worth people stepping outside and taking the time to go to, because that's important to recognize, that people's time is precious, and you need to respect that by putting on a great experience. That if I'm going to come outside, it should be for something that's impactful, but that speaks to me. It can't be about you, the organizer, right? So I say that to say, you just hit it on the nail, right? I talk about that all the time. That is one thing that has changed, because we learned how to, pop on a Zoom if we needed to. We are, do something virtual. We weren't doing that before COVID. We were going to, now I know me personally, just being in events, I was going to sometimes 3 or 4 events a day, just because I wanted to make sure that I, popped myself in those areas. Now I'm very selective. That event has to be specific to what I'm looking for, whether it's my industry, whether it's the people I want to be around, whether it's some type of goal that is going to help me kind of grow. And if it's not hitting one of those things, I'm not going. And you know what? I'm unapologetic about it. I feel like my time needs to be very strategic. So if that event doesn't align with my needs, then I won't go.
I really love that, because besides just the being selective, the reminder to really be strategic in terms of where do we want to show up. And Marie Veben, welcome Christy, welcome Lisa, welcome Marie VB. Thanks for joining us on multiple platforms. And Marie's my sister from another mother, and she's really reminding us about the impact of what you're saying about making your time intentional. Because I think the narrowing or the selecting which choice, and I love that, because Allie mentioned it, that she decided to just totally change her background, totally change where she was, sell possessions, pack a car, just move off to a totally different area. And I think Marie's really hitting it in terms of the intentional part about it, because I think we forget sometimes. And Marie and I were part of BNI, of Business Network International, and BNI is in a zillion countries, and there's a bunch of chapters. And I'm a BNI alumni, and my sister from another mother, she was in it, took a break, came back. She's all revved up and involved kind of in the highest levels. And I think what I love about the title you picked is there's 2 different parts about it. There's the power part, the impact part, and the really reminding us about whether we're being selective about it, we're being strategic about it, and sometimes really being intentional about it. What I love was way back when, one of the first mentors who adopted me at our BNI chapter, who's one of our angels now. She's in charge of like the book clubs and the organizations and the networking events up above. I'm pretty sure. But I think one of the things she reminded me was, when someone invites you someplace, ask them, why is this for me? Why do you think this is a good place? What you're inviting me someplace to explore, to meet somebody, to expand. And I loved it because she helped me really practice asking, hey, not the what's in it for me, but the why part. We forget that sometimes in the communities that we're in.
Yeah, 100%. And so now you're, when you ask that question, now you're making it about them. And I think a lot of times people make, oh, I have this great event, or I have this great event idea. I have this great, let's do it. But did you really consider the person you're inviting So I love that question of why. Um, but Mel, I wanted to mention this because you had talked about the title, and I want to let you know, and I don't know if you know this, because you invited me to come on. And you said, hey, let me know what you want to talk about, and the power of community is specifically about you in this community and Event Alchemy. And I said, no, 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 we got to talk about what this is because, like you said, I joined a LinkedIn audio, God, at least a year ago. I don't even know where the time went. But there were other people doing it as well. But I kept coming back. I enjoyed the space. I enjoyed the conversation. I enjoyed the people. You had a way of bringing really great, insightful people. And then I remember traveling because, I would be traveling. I remember I would travel, and we're talking about internationally. Like I was in Colombia. And when I tell you I was doing time conversion and making sure I was showing up, even though I was in a different country. So you have something good when somebody makes sure that they prioritize coming to your event when they're in a different country. I was showing up. I was like, can you hear me now? So I just wanted to, give you your flowers about this organic and authentic community, because that's another thing we can talk about. People can say that they're putting together community, but is it authentic? It shouldn't be forced. It shouldn't have this ickiness about it. It should just be natural, right? And the people come, and once you know that you have people in that community that make that environment feel good, other people are going to see that. So they know that it's this authentic thing. They know that they're being heard. So there's a lot of components that people don't realize about community. And sometimes it's very underutilized, right? Because people don't think they have to build, or they're too busy saying we have to build community. We have to build community. That's not authentic. Let it come. Let that community revolve around what it needs to be. And you and Michael do a really good thing about it, where we come in these conversations and you just let them go. You let people talk. You don't even know where it's going. I mean, give us a topic. Okay, let me take that back. But you give us a topic and you let people talk. You don't interject your thoughts until everybody has had a time to speak. I've noticed all of that. So you have a good thing going with this community that I wanted to make sure people hear this about Event Alchemy, because it's very true. It's very, very fluid and authentic. And that's what makes a great community.
I really want to thank you for that. I think one of the things that you reminded me, and I laugh because, as they say, there's no accidents. I was trying to think today of what to wear for Amazing Tiffany, and you'll laugh and trying to think of things that are on the topic. And as she says, traveling at the moment, and I laugh because as Tiffany would say, I had to make sure the lipstick was right because I adore this lovely woman. But the shirt I'm wearing says "Believe," and I think that's one of the things when you start, we have a choice to bring an energy into spaces as opposed to just removing the energy that's in the room. And I think that's one of the keys. And one of the keys in the sense of we got to start from someplace. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I love is one of the business coaches I had interviewed ages ago, and I appreciate her because I didn't hire her, but man, in our chemistry sessions or our exploration sessions, I learned so much about there's an opportunity when we connect to welcome people, to really invite people in. Whether you're saving a seat at the table, whether you have a community and it feels like there are inner and outer circles, or, kind of like the Olympic rings where you can feel like you're going around in circles and you're not really connecting with people. But I think the important part is creating an energy. And when we can, giving people an opportunity to kind of identify the intersections. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I love about Event Alchemy is, Michael, there's so much fun coming up with topics. And now we've moved from LinkedIn audio to Zoom with the change in the platforms. And one of the things I really love is when people arrive, how comfortable it feels like, whether it's they're indoors, they're in their cars, they're with their kids, they're with their families. As you said, you're on vacation. But I think the genuine part has to be the feeling of coming as we are. We don't have to put on a mask. We don't have to be somebody we're not.
Yeah.
And I think that part I really love from the perspective of what you were saying about the genuine part. And just thank you for that, because we really are treasuring. We're about 18 months into the community.
Yeah.
And I think the fun part is Zoom really changed the feel of it, the texture. We are having some deep conversations in a really rich and a global way. It's a really kind of cool.
It's definitely created this safe space, and it's so interesting. I don't know quite how to explain it for someone who's never been in the conversation. But what's interesting is you come into this space where you probably don't know many of the people. Maybe you know Mel, maybe you know Michael, and suddenly you're connected to them by what they say, or they're saying something that you were feeling, and you're co-signing it, and they're applauding you. I think another thing too is once you say something, people are supporting it. They're applauding you and thanking you for your vulnerability. We had someone on here who, I mean, she was younger, right? But she was a student, and and we were just cheering on. I mean, we just kind of adopted her, like, look, invite us to the graduation type thing. But over a period of 1 hour, you instantly feel like these are your people, and it's not, like I said, it's organic. It's not forced. And you make that vibe where you make people feel comfortable as well too. I think a lot of times when people come in, they don't know what to expect. They don't know if they're going to be up on the stage with an elevator pitch, which I hate, to be to be honest. I hate do my 30-second pitch. And so people are weary, or they come in off camera, or they come in muted. And then you have a way of welcoming and inviting people to speak. And that's what they do. And then they comment on others. And so using some of that framework, you can do that for any type of event or any type of program that you're doing, as long as you're putting that attendee in mind, as long as you're welcoming them. I talk a lot about inclusivity. You want your people to feel included into the conversation. There should never be a part where, oh, I don't want to jump in. Oh, they're having a conversation and, I can't say anything. You never want them to feel like outside looking in. And so when you talk about community, you have to really put that in mind before you're even putting together an event or a program. Think about what does that community say about you, your business, and your brand.
I love that, because you really reminded me of one of our early conversations way back when in Event Alchemy. And we were talking about that process of how you're inviting people in, how you're welcoming them. And one of the gems, and I love it because it's in my notes deep, one of the stories Tiffany shared with us was about having an event and inviting people in and promising the person she was inviting, feel free to come solo. Yes. I will introduce you to my friends. I will introduce you to who is in the room. And I think that part of the invitation people miss. We have people who are in different industries. They're in different cultures. They hear someone from their profession is in the room. A really good example, I went to an organization that Michael had invited me to that I became a member of. And in the introductory, kind of the orientation, kind of the welcome session, someone else mentioned positive intelligence. I'm a positive intelligence coach. It's not something I lead with. I lead with the events and with trust. Mm-hmm. But this person mentioned positive intelligence, and I'm like, oh, hi. I need you to know this person. I had the feeling like the person felt, I sent them a message in chat. The person felt like a deer in headlights. And I think there's that part of the energy part that's behind the vibe that's there. We're all welcome.
Yeah.
We're all coming from many different places. We have many different challenges. Now we've got, as some would say, we're in communities that are trying to rebuild. They're trying to recalibrate.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I've never known so many people who are running for political office as I do right now at this moment. People who are announcing their candidacy, they're about to run. They're starting fundraising campaigns. They're looking for volunteers. They're trying to get signatures. And I find it kind of interesting. And I think in that part of communities, we forget the other voices. I really thought in the chat, I was really hesitant to write this message to this person that I saw in a Zoom room. And I had to remember my instincts were letting me know in this particular case with this particular person, this person and I had different definitions of community.
Mm-hmm.
And that sometimes I think underneath it is some of us are looking for the unity part. Some
Mm-hmm.
of us are looking for the come as you are part, you know. Others are looking for the power, the impact, the influence. I love it because Tiffany is reminding me as I had a chance to use my passport within the last 3 weeks, you know, and as she's traveling to different conferences. And I love it because I'm telling you, if you are sitting home and you are not sure where you're going next, you need to follow Tiffany Velvet English because she will inspire you. When we met and she said she was going to Columbia, and I'm like, oh. And then my brother just came back from a stop in Columbia. And
Oh, nice.
it's the real reminder too that under community there's a dream. This person I reached out to was not dreaming of connections. They weren't dreaming of collaborations. They were
Yeah.
dreaming of their power. And I think that's the part, as hey, Shawn Michael, warm welcome. But I think that's the part that under community and Shawn Michael and Tiffany, I'm telling you, the two of them, I have to see the two of you together like on a podcast with a boy. Y'all can have some deep, deep conversations. But I think the richness of it is we all define it differently.
Right.
And we don't always share that comfortably. Here I was at a networking event, or what looked like it was a networking event. And, pre-pandemic, we would extend our hand, I'm a hi person. You see me on Zoom, hi. I want to let the person know, hey, I'm seeing you. Welcome. Sit, take your time, settle in, jump in whenever you're ready. But I think that part of community, Marie's taking it someplace else. Marie's saying, ask not what you can get, but how you can serve.
I love that.
My sister from another mother, serve is starting to mean something else too in certain communities. So you're right. We think of serve as service with a smile, right? You think of, the act of volunteering, the act of helping someone. What can I do?
Yeah. But and you think about communities and the longevity, of it, and you talk about, Event Alchemy has been, 18 months now, and you think about the community should be the long term, right? We don't do pop-ups. Like, let's not talk about a community as a pop-up. We talk about extending the relationship on long term, where, people can come in and feel what it's about, but then continue to come back. Right. And I love how Maria said, how can you serve? Because sometimes people just need to know that they're around other people that get them. Maybe they're starting their entrepreneurial journey and, maybe their friends and family are not giving them the support. There have been a lot of events that I had, used to run a networking group for women that primarily became a support system. You can do it. We've been there. What do you need? And people would leave this event just feeling that warmth. And that's it. Sometimes that community, will deliver what you need at that time. It could be a hug. It could be a girl, I got you. It could be a I've been there. And I know there's communities that I'm a part of in my event world where I was on a different trajectory. You know, I came from corporate and then I started to be planning independently. And there were planners that just kind of wrapped their their arms around me and said, "Hey, we got you. Have you thought about this?" And I am still in contact with them. So you know, you say that there's these different meanings of community, but the core of it is, how does that community make you feel? How is that person who's running that community making that space for you? And I mean, and that's the power too, right? So we just talked about community and that power, because it may be different for different people. And you'll be at the same event. You could be at the same event and get different results out of it. So, and I love that, because it's very personal, right? And as long as that person is organizing that community with, you know, genuine care and concern for, like Marie said, about how we can serve, that community is going to do well. That community can take it a form on itself, right? So I just love that idea of really putting in effort into what that community should be like. What do you want it to be like? You know, we're not talking about building a community. We're not talking about it has to be how many people. You know, I want 100 people. This I want the nucleus of the community. What is that? What do you want it? What do you want it to feel? So that's what I love it. And you know, I'm very intuitive person, so I love that energy and the feeling, and you know, really thinking about being intentional and having people gravitate towards that.
I love that as you're saying it. And Mary put a comment that, you know, there's a little bit of a LinkedIn display delay in terms of what they're sharing with us. But warm welcome, Mary and Sean Michael. Thanks again for popping into joining us. But Mary mentioned the part about dreaming of their power. And I think that can be the part that people are hoping in the connection, in the possibility to discover an opportunity, to discover a chance, to kind of be invited in, you know, and as opposed to when we were younger, to be part of the cool kids or the cool cliques, you know. And I really have to say, as a younger person, in terms of community, I was always on the outskirts of them. I wasn't really sure of the seat. I had a tendency to create my own seats, and there's somebody I have to reach out to who, on vacation, I ran into somebody I haven't seen in possibly 15 or more years. And you'll laugh, because Tiffany, we ran into each other at baggage claim in the airport, and we weren't on the same flight. We weren't on the same flight. We were going on the same, you know, destination. We were both flying in a day early, make sure we didn't have a lag, make sure we were able to get on that cruise. And this wonderful woman, her name is Star. And I laughed because we were waiting, you know, for like the hotel shuttle. And we knew it was hot, and we were in Fort Lauderdale. So we're in like a really comfortable air-conditioned spot. And here's Star trying to figure out, where's the luggage coming out on baggage claim? And she laughed because she just looked over and we smiled. And instantly, the angst from, oh, how am I going to find this hotel shuttle? It evaporated. Because here is someone just sharing light, you know. People talk about it all the time, sharing love, sharing light, sharing energy. But she just reminded you were in the right place. We were all going to get there. We were going to have a fabulous time. And she's like, where in the world is my luggage? And I laughed because I wasn't anywhere near the carousels where the luggage came through. And we were cracking up because we sent her to another carousel. And I said, I cannot wait to see you tomorrow. She's like, how do we know each other? I said, you are always this wonderful smile. You're always inviting me in. And what I loved was later on vacation, the introvert in me needed to change my location and change it quickly.
Mhm.
And there was Star, and Star just looked at me. She's like, "Breathe. I got you." And I smiled because occasionally in that community, as you're saying, whether it's somebody inviting you in, somebody who's going to mentor you, somebody who's opening doors, somebody who's just, you know, giving you a great idea of where the check-in line is, where you pick up your badges, where your next step is, where your next direction is. But what I really smiled at was her flight was late, she was exhausted, and here she shared, I think, the beauty, and that I think is the power when we're comfortable enough to kind of let a little bit of ourselves out.
Yeah.
You really have a sense to invite somebody in. And I'm so glad you're going places where people are constantly opening doors for you, because you do this for all of us in many ways. You take the complex, you make it simple. You take the, I'm not sure how to say this. I'm not sure if this is the right time for this. And you bring the Tiffany velvet style kind of comfort, the kind of comfort, that elegance and grace in it. And I'm laughing as she's laughing because I'm telling you, for those of you who haven't met her, check this beautiful woman out. Check out her YouTube. Check out her and yeah, what's happening, what's coming up that people can kind of step in to support you in between our impossible lives.
Well, yes, yeah, thank you. I recently started a YouTube channel, and going weekly live about events a weekly, and I wanted to pull back a little bit of my day to day or behind the scenes when it comes to planning events. And I realize I just get into doing, and a lot of people don't know exactly what I do from day to day. And I just wanted to chat about it because it is something different every day. And so I have topics about, working with venues and, mistakes to avoid, and, just recent conversations and it's a lot of times targeted for people that are interested in planning their own in-person events and, may think it's overwhelming or a little hesitant. So I want, just as my mission is to work with people that are passionate about sharing their expertise or what they have, and kind of getting, knocking down some of the barriers that they have. I've talked to people that have been talking about planning their event for years. I'm like, wait, years? What's going on? How can we help you, start now? And a lot of times they're just, it's a fear. And I don't see a lot of people helping others do it in a way where they're not going to get stuck. I feel like a lot of planners will solicit their services, but sometimes, when I started events, I couldn't afford to hire anyone. So I did it on my own, and I, got overwhelmed and overburdened, and, it was expensive. But sometimes you just need a go-to person to be like, does this sound right? A lot of times, because I'm so heavily involved in, working with venues and working with, hotel properties, I know what things should cost. I know what budgets sure. So when someone says, hey, does this sound right? I can let you know with a shadow of doubt, like, you can negotiate that, or this is a little low. So, just being able to give back is really important to me. And I really enjoy people who are passionate about presenting in person, and obviously with community. Community is such a big one for me, because way back when I started my own community because I felt alone and isolated as an entrepreneur. So I started a group called Women in Business Connect out of Chicago. And before the pandemic, we would have these monthly networking events, and they were wonderful. And I always marketed and promoted it as it wasn't your 100 people business card exchange. It was maybe 20, 25 women, and everybody had a way of getting their conversation, but it was so low key. And, to your point earlier, come alone, because that was another fear. People would see these networking events and they would, oh, who am I going to talk to? I can't go by myself. Or, oh, I can't go because I don't have a business card. So those are the things I would say. Leave your business cards at home and, come alone, that you'll leave with friends. And, if those are listening, my people that stuck with me from Women in Business Connect, who I still know and love, that was my first real sense of community that I wanted to take with me wherever I went. Wherever I went, as far as events or in business, I know I wanted to have a community around me. And that's why I'm as well making sure that I have community in the services that I'm offering as well with my events and Events Made Simple. So yeah, it's been a long journey to get to this space, but I recognize when I come across people that I want in my circle, like you, Mel, who we've been we've been kind of linked together for quite some time. I feel like I've known you longer than I have, but you when you sense really good people, you want them to make sure that they're in your circle, in that community, because they only make you better.
I love that, and really just to say thank you. Sometimes we're not sure in that process of taking steps to create community, what that community is going to look like, what it's going to feel like. I'm a real believer in there's some music behind it. There's a vibe behind it. There's a beat behind it. And it's one of the things I love as I'm listening to Tiffany approaching the different places she's going, the different conferences, because there's so many different venues. There's so many different places you're going to. There's so many different setups, so many different environments. But I think one of the things that's really challenging is for some, every new place is a new community, because sometimes you're the host, sometimes you're the attendee, sometimes you're the volunteer, you're the stakeholder, you could be, part of the event professional supporting an event. It can really feel like a new team, a new community, even though maybe there's a familiar face there, but there's always the opportunity for the newness. And I think for some, really, that can really be a little spooky. We have a lot of different cultures. We have a lot of, Tiffany and I keep chatting about for an upcoming retreat, and you'll laugh. Every day on that cruise, I was at the juice bar. So I started my day with the fresh juices, and we kept saying, there are certain things that we need, whether it's comfort, whether it's a friendly face to invite you in, whether it's that person who's greeting you, whether it's transportation with a sign, whether there's some sort of signage as to what's next. But I think that next step part in communities can kind of be invisible. People aren't really sure once they investigate, or once they invest in membership, or once they buy a ticket to someplace, what in the world is next?
What next?
So I think creating a space in there to really welcome every member of the community. And it can be challenging at a really large one. You mentioned like events with like 500 people. You can't necessarily greet everybody in person. But I love supporting people at events where everybody may get what feels like a generic welcome, but as they're leaving, there's some sort of personal touch, which lets the person know, yep, I was in the right place. I was in the right space. And that part, I think, of what you're saying about communities, whether we taking the time to welcome somebody in chat, whether we're saying hi, whether it's a handshake, whether it's an audio message, whether it's a written note, a beautiful swag bag, a gift that's inviting you in, or just somebody saying thank you. And I think you're reminding me in all of our conversations, those little extra touches that may feel authentic to us or may feel genuine to us. I crack up because Elijah drowns this to me all the time. He says, you would type something about smiles across the miles. I was like, what in the world is this woman talking about? And then he says, we were at an event and the tech wasn't quite working. And here Elijah and I were chair dancing. And he's like, oh my goodness, she really means smiles across the miles. And I think that part in the community of putting in the touches that really feel like the ways that you'd want to greet or welcome someone.
Yeah.
The ways that you would want someone just to take the time, to take the care, to just reach out. And it can be hard because we lose those little touches. We don't all have a CRM that tells us of everybody's favorite color, or this organization we travel with, they track what your beverage of choice is, so they know what to put in your room to greet you, and what I love about Tiffany, about the parts of slowing events down, of slowing relationships down, is to really remember, put more of us in there, put more of the human touches in there.
Yes. Agreed. When you think about them as the overall, like, long term, as part of your brand, as part of your business, it's not a one-off event, right? I had a call last week about doing a client event, and they said, we can start with this, but this will lead into something else, and then when we follow up, we'll do this. So thinking about that one connection with that one client, we're going to invite them to this event, but the journey of this isn't over. And you make a point about those small touches. It could be just as simple as listening. We pick up on what people like, and it's so simple. Oh, how's your dog? Yeah, and I have conversations, and mind you, I'll talk, and half the time I don't even know what I'm talking. I'll just talk. I'm having a conversation. I went here or there. I get on a call, and they're like, "Hey, how was that thing you did last week?" Oh my gosh, you were listening. So it's those small takes, but it's listening. It doesn't have to be a big budget. Right? So it doesn't have to be, this, if you can't afford these gifting, it doesn't matter. It's the intent you need to focus on when you're building that community. Can you do an intake form when they sign up where they can suggest, anything, right? Favorite color, what's your sign? Oh, don't get me started with your sign. Because if I see that you're a Cancer, we're going to talk. So just little things like that, those are conversation starters. I know I appreciate, and you talk about, it's harder for bigger events, but I appreciate putting email names in person where they're like, hey, how are you doing, Tiffany? And you're like, oh my gosh, you know me. So just having, like you said, that extra care into, you've already built a community, right? You still have to leverage and grow that community so they feel warm and welcome. But all you need is some time to really think about what that means. Because people are like, oh, once I get a budget, I'll do this. No, you have the tools already to leverage and build that community. It's about you. So I love that, what you said about that, and making sure that, your community feels warm and cared for from the beginning.
And warm welcome as you're saying that, as Jay is popping in, and Jay is the Jedi Master. So thank you for popping in, Jay, and bringing "May the Force be with us" today. As we're getting ready to celebrate in a couple of weeks. I think the opportunities, whether it's for networking, whether it's for education, whether it's for connection, that somewhere in that, as Tiffany and I are saying, there's the opportunity for personalization. Absolutely. There's something somewhere that you remember about almost everyone you meet. And yep. Whether you find it important or not, inviting them back, welcoming them back, and letting them know that they were heard, that they're important, that there's a valuable place for them, that there's a seat there. And Jay is typing away. Jay says, building community involves honesty, respect, support, and love. Woo! You're so right.
Agreed.
You're so right. And it can be challenging to build them across cultures, across generations, across genders, and in some cases across identities. But I
Sure.
love that Jay is really reminding us of the respect part and really of the honesty. Show up as you are. When you're a little nervous, there's somebody else in the room who's feeling that same nerves. When
Yes.
you're not sure, there's somebody else there. And I love that invitation in a community. There's somebody in a room always, as Marie said before, to be able to serve others, to be able to help others, know that they're around. And as Tiffany and as Star would say, they got you. They have us. We sometimes all need to hear that. I got you. And I appreciated it because I wasn't asking for help.
Hmm.
But obviously, I really looked like I needed some help. And I think sometimes we're not, mm, we're so independent. We're
Yeah.
so interconnected, but we have to understand too, people are able to read our eyes, our body language. Let them in if you're in a really safe space. Let them in, give them the opportunity to show you in a trusting way that they can be trusted and they can take great care of you.
Yeah. It's funny you say that too, because, be be cognizant of where that person is in that community. Are they a first timer? Are they a returner? Because the communication is going to be different. If I'm returning back to event alchemy, I'm like, hey, I'm back. But someone coming in is hesitant, and your story reminds me of a conference I went to for the first time. I didn't know what to expect, and I just start talking with another planner who physically pulls me to start saying, do you know Tiffany? Do you know Tiffany? I want to introduce you to someone. And how I felt just received, because like you said, we're not going to ask, right? Sometimes we don't even know how to ask for help. We're not going to say, can you introduce me to people? So sometimes it's recognizing what that person needs to feel part of something. And because of that encounter, I'm going to show up to that event year after year because I know there are good people in the room. And I'm going to do that for someone else, which I did this year because it was my second time back this year. And I just gave, my resources and expertise to someone who was first timer. And she kept saying, thank you, I appreciate you. And I felt it was my duty. It was kind of, it was giving back. And I hope that that same planner will do that next year for someone else. So it's that trickle effect of, like you said, whether it's mentorship or something where you're not waiting for someone to ask, but you're in that position to help. And like you said, serve, Marie. But 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 doing it before, they have a chance to ask for help. So that's just one example. And I want to mention what they said about honesty, because um, I want to say your community is forgiving. So once you build that community and, things go wrong with an event or with a program, and they will, your community is forgiving. They'll forgive you for your tech issues. They'll forgive you because the food came out late. They'll forgive you as long as you, like Jay said, you're honest. You have built that community of, I'm not going to hide things from you. I'm not going to give you the okey doke and say one thing and then turn around and do something else. We know as attendees, as part of community members, we know things go wrong. You're human. When I tell you, I've had so many mishaps with events, but when you and you don't want to tell them, right? Because then you're admitting that you did something wrong. And when you tell them, and you think it's the end of the world, they're like, yeah, we know you got us. Oh, we know you're going to handle this. So I just love how Jay put, along with, we talk about respect and support, but honesty is like a big one, because that's what's going to have people coming back no matter what happened. You could have a power outage. They're going to forgive you when you're honest about it. You're honest about something that happened. You're communicating, right? You're saying, hey, I know I said this. but here's the deal. People appreciate that.
Oh, I love that you're saying that because you're really reminding us that somewhere in that process of building relationships, there's always an opportunity to share with clarity or share with transparency.
Yep.
And sometimes it's not the best of news. I smile because a dear client called while we were on the cruise, and I happened to have been away from my phone for a hot sec. And our client, we were talking about the fact that while we were away, I said, "Hey, WhatsApp always works." And he was delighted and I appreciated it. He called during like the cruise dinner hour, on WhatsApp. And I missed the call, I think, because, they had come with like the sign in sale. So I wasn't looking at my phone. And we created an opportunity to speak the next day. And
Okay.
what I smiled in the process was somebody's like, "You're on vacation. You shouldn't." Are you kidding? This is an amazing, amazing 8-year client. And the fact that he called during dinner hour meant something somewhere. He needed something. And I really appreciated it because when we talked the next day, he actually asked me a question about event sponsorship for an event that I'm not part of the volunteers or the professionals, but what I loved was his question caused me to really tap into a knowledge of membership associations and a knowledge of not for profits. And I didn't have the answer that he needed, but we were able to talk about different types of approach. And what we were acknowledging was in this community, someone was being less than honest with him. They were
Mm.
being less than transparent. And the weird part was it involved a gifting situation where he's the sponsor of a certain gift and he's like, "Well, let me provide the gift." And I'll provide the gift. And, he was trying to negotiate with them, not so much about the level of the sponsorship, but he wanted to make sure the sponsorship really suits his brand. It suits his intention as part of a member of this association. And they weren't giving him a piece of information. He's like, "When we work with you, you're giving me every angle. You'll give me a website so I can go and look and do my own research or my own due diligence." And he says the first time he did this, he says, I was shocked because somebody would say, "Oh, well, here's the information I need to go purchase the product from somebody else." On the other hand, I know he's intelligent and a well-informed buyer is one of the happiest people because he knows the ins and the outs and the angles. And somebody not being transparent with him and
Yeah.
not respecting the question, he's investing 5 figures in an event.
Yeah.
Even if you don't know the answer, somebody somewhere knows it.
Right.
And I offered, I said, I'll be back next week, but you know something? If you have an opportunity to get in touch with them, let's get with them on WhatsApp. I'm happy to help you have this conversation because really, he just needed someone to make his investment make more sense to him.
Okay.
That he was investing in the right thing for his brand, the right thing for his business, and taking the right next steps. And I'm like, "You're spending 5 figures. This is not a $20. Let me return this.
Right. Right.
Um, and I think sometimes there, Jay put it, be transparent and understand why an individual needs accommodations, but be transparent and understand why everyone needs answers. Everyone
Yes.
is entitled to ask the question. Whether you need to take it offline, create a separate space for it, create more support, introduce them to somebody else who can help make it simpler. But y'all, you could see I adore talking to Tiffany, and we could talk about community and events all day. Well, the one thing I want to encourage you is if you're stuck planning any aspect of an event, a venue, how to reach a sponsor, how to select something that matches your brand and your intentions, Tiffany English, a Velvet Style, is your girl. Because what I appreciate is understanding parts of event strategy, and a lot of what we do kind of dovetails and overlaps in a really cool way. But this brilliant woman will help you add the right touches to any personal event, any corporate event, any fundraiser, any conference, in any culture and in any country, and in less steps. So, on that note, I want to truly thank you, beautiful Tiffany, for joining us today. For those of you who haven't had a chance to pop into Event Alchemy, in the month of April, Michael and I will be hosting Zooms on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. for the next 3 Tuesdays. Pop in if you're on LinkedIn. Check out events. You'll see the event pop up a little bit later today. But when you pop in, know that beautiful Tiffany is there 9 times out of 10. Unless there is a conference or a flight, this beautiful woman can always be found as a treasured member of every community. I'm honored to have had a chance to have another conversation with you. And follow Tiffany's amazing YouTube channel. Follow her for tips. Introduce anybody to her who's really looking for a way to kind of differentiate themselves and make things the next level. And we hope you have a magnificent day filled with opportunities and with possibilities. Take great care. Be well.
Thank you.
Thank you, beautiful. Have a fantastic day, everybody. Stay safe, stay well, stay inspired, and please stay in touch.